Good afternoon and welcome. My name is John Mackewich. I am an attorney. Glad to have you here today for cannabis license opportunities in Ohio and New Jersey. I have been an attorney for approximately 15 years. My background is corporate, regulatory, and M&A work. Practice in all the regulated markets, banking, gaming, securities. And so when cannabis came on board about 10 years ago, it was a natural fit for me. I've been practicing in the cannabis space now for about 10 years, working with clients around the country and almost every state where cannabis has been legalized. Today, we're going to take some time to talk about some of the opportunities that are available to you in Ohio and New Jersey, two of the Midwest and East Coast states that are attractive for various reasons, both to local residents as well as out-of-state operators who are looking to expand their footprint. The first state that we're going to look at today is Ohio. Ohio is currently a medical-only state. It's been operating here now for a few years. There is a ballot drive in process right now for adult use. We don't anticipate that will be voted on until at least next November. So for the time being, this is simply a medical discussion here in Ohio. Ohio is surrounded by numerous states that are in the cannabis industry. Michigan to the north has both medical and adult use. Illinois to the west, both medical and adult use. Pennsylvania to the east, which is medical. So for the Midwest region, this is an attractive state, especially for those operators who are looking to expand their footprint. Ohio currently has just opened another round of medical dispensary licenses. There will be 73 new additional medical dispensary licenses available in Ohio. Currently, there are 58 licensed operators here in the state. At this time, they're not opening it up to cultivation or processing, and as indicated, it is medical only. Ohio recently also just expanded their cultivation from 25 to 75,000 square feet. We were hoping that there would be another round of cultivation licenses available, but from a practical sense, I think Ohio is going to wait and see whether or not the expanded cultivators can supply the additional 73 new medical dispensary licenses that are coming on board. So what do we have to do now in Ohio? Timeline here for Ohio. So this past week, Ohio issued the application. It is available on the Department of Agriculture's website in Ohio. I'll have a link to it here later in the seminar. There will be 2 Q&A sessions that they will be putting. If you have questions as to the process, as to the ordinance, as to how any of that works, you can email the Department of Agriculture and they'll respond and give out answers here first on October 6th, then on October 21. It is a short window for the actual application submission, 2-week window, November 4th, including November 18th. However, as I indicated, the actual application is available on the state's website now. So even though we can't submit it yet, we can begin the process to start filling that out and completing it. So where can we get a license in Ohio? Ohio, similar to what we saw in Illinois, is breaking this down into geographic zones across the state. Some are by county and some are multi-county in how they're expanding it. For example, if you can see at the map there, Lucas County, where Toledo is, there's going to be 3 new licenses. Hamilton County will have 11 total. And then each county, each district of the state will have certain licenses that are allocated to it. What this means from an application submission standpoint is that you will be submitting by zones in the state, similar to Illinois. So for example, if you want an application in Toledo, you're going to be clicking on Lucas County, Hamilton County if you want Cincinnati. Your applications will not be scored or graded against other regions, simply those within that region. So there's some strategy that's going to come into play here based on where and how you should apply based on the number of licenses that are available within each one of those regions. Some of the key facts. How much does it cost to apply here in Ohio? It's a $5,000 application fee, and you can win up to 5 licenses. This includes the current operators. Many of the current operators already have licenses, some of them 5. They can apply in this round as well, but the most that any applicant can win is 5 licenses total within the state. Since it is set up by region, you can also win no more than 2/3 of any region in the state. So, for example, if there were 3 licenses to be awarded in one particular region, the most that you could win in that region is 2 of those licenses. You can have more than one applicant apply on the same parcel. However, there's some strategy that may or may not go into that involvement. Once the state determines that you have reached a certain score or you're going in the lottery, anyone with a lesser score, lesser lottery number, is disqualified from that parcel. So in some situations, it may make sense to go on the same parcel, and a lot of other ones it's not going to. As an applicant, you can apply for more than one license in Ohio. There is no limit on the number of licenses that you can submit. There is a limit, however, as to how many times that you can apply on one parcel or an adjacent parcel. That is 1. So you cannot turn, for example, 20 applications in on one parcel. You're limited to one parcel. If you want to turn multiple applications in, we need to have multiple parcels, multiple real estate that we are going to apply for. Do we need funding? Yes. Part of the application is a requirement that whatever it is that we tell the state that we're going to build out for each license, we have to have the capital behind it. So if we are applying for 5 licenses and we're telling the state that it's $1 million per license, we have to have $5 million behind us in order to apply for those 5 licenses. Ohio is going to be similar to Illinois. This will be a lottery, a drawing. The state is going to create a random ranked order of applications for each district. And then if there are more than applicants per number of licenses to be given out, the state will conduct a lottery in that district. So this is one that is not a merit-based application, meaning my application is better than yours. We still have to meet all the requirements for the application. We still have to comply with all the rules and regulations. And if we do that as of right now, then we would go into the drawing and have a ranking in an order of which the state is going to pick winners and losers. Will there be any sections of the application that is more competitive or that we have to comply with in a competitive nature? We won't know until that first FAQ hits. As of right now, it lists a list of documents that we have to apply. We're taking the position that, everything that the state asks for has to be in the application. And if it is, then you should be able to get in that drawing. What are some of the documents that are required for Ohio? You will need a business plan. This includes a site plan and a facility plan. One of the peculiar things for Ohio right now is that this application is real estate centric. Applications are due November 18th, so we have less than 2 months to get these in. We must have a site plan that's stamped by the contractor or architect responsible for the project. We must have a detailed site-specific construction or renovation budget stamped by the contractor or architect. And we must also have a survey of that location that we're looking to do. Since we only have 3 months to apply in Ohio, the real estate is going to be the key factor to deciding how and where most applicants apply. A lot of municipalities who opted out last application process a few years back are not able to redo their zoning process in time to get new zoning ordinances through. So from a practical sense, most likely each applicant is going to be looking for property in those municipalities that opted in last time. We also need a detailed budget, organizational chart, sources of capital, security, and surveillance plan. So even though this is a drawing or lottery, this is a full-blown application. We don't know the depth and scope of what this business plan, what the security plans, what some of the other plans are going to be until we see the FAQs. But as of right now, each one of those is going to go in the application process. Time-sensitive items. As of today, we are under 60 days to complete everything. Some of the items that are time-sensitive for Ohio will be fingerprinting. This is especially true for anyone who is out of state. Based on backlogs, you're going to run the risk that if you don't do this quickly, you may not get these back in time to submit it. May require a trip to Ohio to get this done on the fingerprint side. Zoning compliance verification, you have to find a property that is zoned for cannabis, is zoned for retail, and have the local municipalities sign off on that. Since Ohio is limited right now in the number of dispensaries, most of the larger municipalities have various properties that are available. However, in certain municipalities, this is going to be an expensive play because you have to lock up the property during the application process in order to turn an application in. You also need a survey of the property, professionally prepared. In talking to various companies that do this, this may be a 2 to 4 week process. So this is something that we don't want to leave until the last week or two of the process. And real estate, we have to either own the property, lease the property, or have an option to purchase or lease the property. If I'm in your shoes writing this application, the very first thing that I'm working on is the real estate. The business plan, everything else is irrelevant until we find the real estate, because those are the items that from a timing perspective is going to take the longest. So what should you be doing right now in Ohio? As I indicated, applications are out. You can go on the Ohio Department of Pharmacy and review that application. If you send me a message, I can email it to you. But the number one thing, as indicated, in my view, is real estate selection. How do you find a piece of property in Ohio in a community that has approved cannabis and lock that up? There's certain ways that you can do this, whether you're paying the CAM charges, whether you're paying a flat fee, whether you're going in there and trying to work out a deal with the owner to say, if I can lock up the property, I'll give you a piece of the pie. But regardless of how it is, most likely this will be a 6 to 9 month process where you're going to have to lock down real estate in order to have an application. If you don't have that property under contract, you cannot turn the application in. I would also start the process, if you don't have boots on the ground in Ohio, to start talking to real estate agents, start talking to people that may have access to property. I spoke to numerous firms this week here in Ohio, and a lot of them said they're at capacity for looking for property. Their phones are ringing off the hook with people asking them to help on finding property. So if you're not from Ohio, that is probably something that I also do fairly quickly, is to engage a commercial real estate agent that specializes in retail to assist you in locking down that property. I would also start the conversation with architects and survey companies here in Ohio to find someone that has the time and capacity to draw out those blueprints, to put together those construction details, as well as to do the survey. We don't want to be waiting until November 1st to contact them to ask them to see if they can do it. Most likely at that point, they're probably busy on other projects, and those are items that have to be part of your application. The application writing selection, this is a quasi-competitive state, meaning that you still have to comply with everything that Ohio requires. It's not going to be the same in-depth application that we're going to see for New Jersey and cultivation, or New York, for example, because those are my application beats yours, I get a license. Here in Ohio, I just have to meet the requirements for the ordinance and for the statute. And so I would recommend not doing this on your own. Talk to other consultants, talk to other lawyers, talk to other application writers, and see if you can engage someone who has done this before in another state. Most of them most likely were not around 3 or 4 years ago in Ohio when we did the first round. But if they have experience in Illinois, they have experience in West Virginia, New Mexico, Arizona, some of the other states that have come on board, that's probably what I would be asking for is, have them explain, what applications they've done, what's their process, what's their success rates, what's their fees. The fees for Ohio compared to some of these other states that are more competitive will be less because it is not a 100% merit-based application. We're not going to need all the other bells and whistles that go into this application unless Ohio surprises us with their FAQs and changes terms. States have done that before, but as of right now, that should help in bringing down cost for whatever application writing team that you use. Same with the legal team. Try to find a cannabis lawyer who has experience putting together contracts, especially on the real estate side when you're locking it up, the corporate documents when you're putting together your team, your foundation. If you're partnering with an MSO, a multi-state operator, make sure that you understand the nuances of what goes into those documents so that way one side is not taking advantage of another. Ohio doesn't have social equity. Many of the others around the country have a social equity component. We don't have that here now, at least at this point in Ohio. The other thing that you probably want to start, at least on your end, is a financial modeling system. We know that we have to demonstrate liquidity and capital to build out whatever it is that we're stating that we're going to tell the state. So start figuring out from a financial model perspective, based on the drawings and based on the timelines that we're going to submit to the state, what is exactly this going to cost? And then determining whether or not we either need to go raise money to assist with the process or raise money or have someone be a financial backer so that we can demonstrate to the state that we have the financial wherewithal to build out our dispensary. If you have questions for Ohio, as I said, the Ohio Board of Pharmacy is going to have 2 rounds of FAQs. Most of the states that do this are fairly good at answering almost every single question that you have. So if you're reviewing the ordinance, if you're reviewing the application, if you're reviewing, for example, drive-through ordinance or zoning ordinances and don't necessarily understand it, email the board. They will submit an answer to that when they come out twice. Or if you have questions, you can also email it to me and I can help you through that process. So that's a brief overview of what is coming down here in Ohio. The next state that we're going to look at is New Jersey. New Jersey is completely different in a sense from Ohio. So in Ohio is stating that we're going to have 73 dispensary licenses, and Ohio is telling you that you can pick where you want those licenses to go as long as the communities opt in. New Jersey is a hybrid of that. So New Jersey is also adult use. Medical was just Ohio. So New Jersey is coming online with adult use licenses for cultivation, manufacturing, or processing, retailers, distributors, delivery services, and a micro license. The only one that's capped at the state level is cultivation. So the state is going to issue up to 37 cultivation licenses. There are different classes that we'll see here shortly within the state, but there's no cap on manufacturing. There's no cap on retail. There's no cap on the micro cultivation businesses, distributives, or delivery services. One of the big differences between New Jersey and Ohio is that at least initially for that first year and a half timeline, you can only apply for one license in New Jersey. So if, for example, that you're applying for a cultivation license in New Jersey, you can't apply for a retail license. So initially, you're going to have to pick which lane that you're going to go in and stick to that lane initially through the first year of applications here in New Jersey. New Jersey has a priority review. So there's a conditional and an annual license. New Jersey set up their system to allow social equity applicants, we're going to lump them into one bunch there, but social equity applicants to have, as it were, the first bite of the apple. And so almost every application that is going to be submitted in New Jersey is going to fall under one of these three titles: social equity businesses, diversely owned businesses, impact zone businesses. And what those are businesses that are owned by females, businesses that are owned by minorities, businesses that are owned by veterans, businesses that are owned by individuals who have had arrests for things like cannabis, businesses that are owned by people that are within certain zones within New Jersey as far as an economic perspective. Those individuals will go first. There is also a micro business license that will be reviewed as well, but it's not part of the initial process, and I'll get to that here in a second. Some of the key items that we need to think about for New Jersey is local residency. Ohio, when we were talking about Ohio, you did not have to be an Ohio resident to apply. Here in New Jersey, we have to have someone who on the ownership side who is a New Jersey resident for 2 years preceding the date of the application. So we can't have someone move to New Jersey today, apply for a driver's license, and try to go to the head of the line through one of those priority. There are also bonus points available based on other categories, living there for more years, things like labor peace agreements. So there's a structure here similar to Illinois where we're trying to draft an application process for New Jersey to give local residents, to give women, to give minority, to give social equity applicants, people that have been impacted by the war on drugs, the first chance to apply for a license in New Jersey. So as indicated, it's either an annual or conditional licenses. Since conditional licenses are reviewed first, those are the ones that almost every single application writer is going to turn in. In theory, we could turn in an annual license right from the get-go, but because we don't go to the front of the line, there's really no incentive or point for an applicant to turn in one of those. So from our perspective, every application that we're drafting here in our office or we'll be reviewing or giving advice on would be a conditional license in New Jersey. Once the conditional license is met, you still have to apply for an annual license, but this is an expedited way to move to the front of the line. So what do we have to have for a conditional application? And this is the same regardless of whether we're applying for cultivation, manufacturing, or retail. So most of what the conditional application is really fact and information gathering behind the company, behind the principles, behind the money of this application. It's not the full-blown business plan that you would see in a normal application. Part of that is included, but this is a way for the state to verify who the owners are, do they qualify as social equity, and can they move to the front of the line. So as indicated here, they have to be over 21. They have to have been there for at least 2 years. We're including copies of driver's license. If we are partnering with other groups to manage or operate the facility, we have to include all of those contracts. There's going to be a personal history disclosure as far as each one of the owners, who they are, what their background is, what the financial sources are, things along those lines. Same with the entity. The other thing that is going to be key for a conditional application is income. So whoever the owners of these conditional licenses are that has decision-making authority, last year, if they're an individual, their gross income could not be more than $200,000 or $400,000 if we're filing jointly. So this application is designed for the working class, middle class, those who are looking to break into the industry. This isn't designed for, as it were, the 1%, those that are making millions already in this business or any other business. If we don't meet these requirements for income, for living in the state, for things like that, we cannot apply under conditional. Same thing here. So every one of our employees, every one of our workers, we're going to have to certify to the state. It's fingerprinting, criminal background checks, and basically allowing the state of New Jersey to look under the hood, as it were, to say, do we have a group of individuals here that would comply with this section? Same thing, if we're applying for an impact zone, social equity, veterans, there's going to have to be proof of submission that we qualify for those sections. If we do get a conditional license, we'll have 120 days to apply for the convert to an annual license. And so this is going to not only make it cheaper and expedite the process for individuals looking to apply in New Jersey, but it's going to save a lot of individuals the back end business plan documents that is normally the most cost expensive part of an application. So that's all going to come next. If you look at the conversion application and some of the items that are in there, this is going to be your business plan. This is going to be your floor plan. This is going to be your zoning approval. This is going to be, looking at it here, your environmental plan, your safety plan, your security plan, your workplace plan, standard operating procedures, things along those lines. And so this is where, from a practical sense, New Jersey gets strategic, because in essence, you're going to be applying for 2 licenses in New Jersey, one at the state level, one at the city level. If we're applying for cultivation, we're applying competitively and most likely would include most of the items here that are on the conversion application, because we want our application to be as competitive as we can. They're picking the best 37 cultivation licenses in the state. Illinois, for example, had 40 craft grows. I think they had about, if I remember right, about 800 applicants on the grow side. Most likely, we're probably going to see similar to that, or even closer to 1,000 here in New Jersey. And so even though from a practical sense, some of the conditional items are not required for a conditional application, I may be including some of these in my initial application just to let the state know that I have these, they understand it, that I'm able to do all of this. The other side is, from a practical and a cost sense, there's no cap on manufacturing and there's no cap on retail. And so I don't need to convince the state of New Jersey that my SOPs, my security plans, my environmental plans are better than anybody else's. What I do need to convince in New Jersey is the local municipality that sets the rules for how many manufacturers and how many retail there are. So cultivation, you're going to have a competitive application at the state level. Manufacturing and retail, we're going to have a competitive application at the city level. So where in New Jersey, can we apply for an application? Similar to Ohio and any other municipality in the country, every New Jersey city has the right to either opt in or opt out and decide, do we want this within our community? If a New Jersey community says yes, they can determine whether they want no caps on retail, they want to limit it to 5, they want to limit it to 10, where it can go, the regions it can go in the city. And so from a real estate perspective, having that relationship with each municipality that you want to apply is going to be key. If you're looking at a particular community and they opted out, now it's our obligation to go back to that community at some point to try to convince them to come in. But when we're convincing them to come in, we're also doing lobbying in essence to say, okay, these are the zones where I want it. And obviously we're talking zones that are advantageous to us, where we have property, where we can obtain property, where we can lock up property, and perhaps even lock out our competition. At least 70% of the cities in New Jersey have opted out at this point. This is similar to what we've seen in other states who do this at the city level, whether it be Michigan, California, Colorado. Most states, when they come online for adult use, have a requirement that they either have to opt out or they're automatically in. And so most of these communities opt out and do a wait and approach and see and say, okay, what happens in the neighboring community? Or perhaps they're not just ready for it yet. And so there's an initial opt-out period. But at some point over the next year, 2 years, most of these communities are going to come back in. So right now, what should we be doing in New Jersey? New Jersey, unlike Ohio, which has the application out, does not have an application out right now in New Jersey. We have the rules, we have the guidelines, we know what goes in the application, we know what goes into each one of the sections, but we don't have the actual application released. The key right now for New Jersey is real estate. A lot of these communities, especially if we're going for retail, have a limited number of licenses available. They have limited zones where you can do it. With 30% of the states saying yes, that means the majority's out. And so there's various maps of New Jersey that show which one of the communities are in, which one of the communities are out. I'd recommend getting a hold of those maps. If you don't have one, email me, I can send it to you. And then start emailing, calling the Planning Commission, City Council in those communities to say, are you in? Are you out? If you're in, where is the zones where we can have retail? Where is the zones where we can have manufacturing? Where are the zones where we can have cultivation? And then find out what the process is. Some of these communities, even though applications are not out, are already granting or approving certain locations, certain teams in those communities. So some of these cities, even though there's no application, have already picked who is going to get those locations in that community. So communities can do this by either the first ones to apply, they can have a competitive application process within that community, but they set their own rules. And so usually what happens is you're going to have lobbyists, you're going to have lawyers, you're going to have consultants go to those communities and argue on behalf of their clients. And so if you're late to the game on the real estate, it makes it a lot harder for you to find a location in that community from a practical budget perspective that will work with you. The other thing that you're going to want to start doing right now, even though the application isn't out, is start thinking about who's on your team. In order to apply in any state, whether it be Ohio or New Jersey, you're going to want to fill out your org chart. Who on your team has regulatory experience, who on your team has cannabis experience, who has retail experience, who has security experience, who has HR experience, who has finance experience. In the pieces that you don't have, we start looking for individuals that we can put on our application to fill those missing holes. The other one that I would start thinking about now is the application writing selection. Similar to Ohio, this is not something that I would recommend that anybody does on their own. Outsource it to someone that has done it, whether that be a consultant, whether that be a law firm, whether that be someone that has written applications for other competitive states. This is going to be more important in New Jersey than Ohio because it is competitive at the city level for manufacturing and retail, and then at the state level for cultivation. So you want someone that can demonstrate in New Jersey that they have won competitive applications in other states, not states like Oklahoma, for example, where anybody who turns in a $2,500 application fee gets a license. That's not a competitive application. So you want someone that can demonstrate that they've done this in other states, or even that they did it previously in New Jersey last time around. Same thing with the legal team. You want a law firm, lawyers on your team. Same with the accountants that understand 280E from a tax perspective that can help set up the structure on both the tax and a legal side. So that way we can allocate 280E issues if we need to, if we have to bifurcate companies for how we're doing things, or even if we're just putting together a team to decide, okay, what makes most sense, knowing that I can only have one application right now in New Jersey. So how do I perhaps have one under my name and then one under my adult child's name? There are certain ways where we can do certain things that are within the parameters, but you still have to be able to draft everything from a legal perspective that will make sure all your I's are dotted and crossed. Security team selection. This is another big one, especially in a competitive application. You're going to want someone who can help you write a security plan and the floor plan. This is where a lot of applications are won and lost. Most competitive applications come down to 1 or 2 points. And so, when you're selecting the third-party teams that write with the application, whether it be security, make sure they've done this in other states. Same for financial modeling. We're either going to have to raise the money or demonstrate that we have it. And this is going to be particularly important on the cultivation. So, if we're going for a class 6 cultivation and we're stating to New Jersey that we're going to build out a 150,000 square foot facility, our financial model should demonstrate, one, that we know what that's going to cost, 2, that it's going to be reflective of the timeline and the model that goes with a 150,000 square foot facility, and that we have the financial wherewithal to build it. If we apply for a class 6 150,000 square foot facility and tell the state that it's only going to cost $1 million, when they look at that, they're going to know that we don't understand how much the build out costs for a facility of that size cost. So it's really from a holistic perspective, even though we don't have an application, starting to put together the fragments, the teams, and the information so that when that application hits, we can have it drafted and ready to go. If it follows what they did the first time around in New Jersey, it was a very short window to turn those in. New Jersey is also, once they come out with the application, going to be accepting applications on a rolling basis. So that means that we're incentivized to turn this in sooner rather than later. So that way they can review our application and hopefully get one of those licenses. It's also, for New Jersey, a short and a long-term play. If I'm applying in a city, for example, in New Jersey that has no cap on retail, I don't necessarily care that I go to the front of the line or the back of the line, as long as I have my retail location locked up in that city. If I'm applying in a city that has 3 locations, I don't necessarily know when that city is going to come on board, but I know that I'll have to have the state requirement ready to go. And so from that perspective, in cities that are already on board or cities that may be coming on board, we want to have manufacturing and retail available and ready to go from a state application perspective so we can apply at the local level. And that is an overview of Ohio and New Jersey. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email is there, my cell phone, 419-346-4155. We have offices in both Ohio and New Jersey. We're happy to meet with you in person, over Zoom, email, call, whatever's convenient on our end. We're happy to make recommendations to real estate agents in those communities, security teams, application writings. From a practical sense, we are a full service law firm as well as a full service cannabis application writing team. Most of the times what we do on our end is quarterback you through the application process based on what your goals and what your needs are. Some applications we write everything except blueprints and security plans from start to finish. Sometimes we work with your third-party consultants to make sure everything is done correctly and turned in on time. And sometimes we just review and edit what you do. So it's really comes down to what are your needs, but we're happy to help you in New Jersey and Ohio however we can. Feel free to reach out, and thank you for attending. Q&A.